Those who wander outside the cities and are weak will lose their lives. Monsters roam around like wild animals. You might run into goblins, undead, mercenaries, dragons, or terrifying ghosts. If you defeat them, they drop like this and you can use your imagination. But if you try that against this monster or that one, you're dead. Unless you're our protagonist, but you'll find that out soon enough. Only the strongest people get missions to hunt monsters so regular folks can focus on expanding the cities. This group of adventurers was being led by a rank D mage. They heard a noise in the forest. Only monsters should be here, but to their surprise, it was a white-haired man who appeared. It was strange. The white-haired man explained that he'd been hired by the village to eliminate these creatures in exchange for money. The adventurers found it odd. The guy didn't even have armor. They measured his mental strength to see if he was tough. The machine said he had 0. That's the same as a normal person. So they laughed at the outsider for claiming he'd hunt monsters while being so weak. The girl explained that people have been fighting monsters for 5,000 years, and only those who can use mental strength can defeat them. So in her mind, the man should just leave, but the protagonist refused to leave the forest and said he'd keep hunting monsters. While the guys were laughing, the girl was actually worried he'd get hurt, so the group decided to clear out all the monsters in the forest before he could run into any. The two men sliced up the goblins, and the girl used her magic to clean them all with her bath spell. They headed toward what should be the base of the Goblin King in this forest. As they went deeper, the weather turned cold and harsh. But even worse than the weather was what they found. This monster was gigantic. Luckily, he was asleep. The idiot of the group poked the king with his finger, just to prove he was sleeping. They could have taken him out in one strike, but that poke woke him up, and in 1 second, the boy's arm was lying far away from his body. He looked at the giant goblin and finally understood it was alive. Only then did he feel real fear and trembled before the creature. Even so, he stood paralyzed as the monster slowly rose. That was the demonic boss creature, classified as a level 3 monster. With just a roar, the monster made the adventurers faint instantly. They were far too weak, losing consciousness from the sound pressure alone. Catherine asked what had happened to her two companions. The protagonist replied that they were traumatized by the monster's energy. The mage asked the boy not to be afraid, saying she would protect him. Then the protagonist saw the mage face the monster without hesitation. Holding her magic staff, she summoned the water spirit once more. The spirit responded by creating a giant shark made of pure water. That attack, however, was nothing to a level 3 monster, leaving the young woman stunned as the strike was completely ignored. The monster prepared to retaliate, clenching its fists in fury. She quickly raised a water barrier to defend herself. Even so, the monster delivered its blow with unexpected brutality. It struck the barrier along with her shield, easily breaking through her defense. Catherine brought her hand to her chest, surprised that her barrier had failed. She had assumed only level 1 beasts inhabited the forest. Now she was defenseless, the adventurers unconscious, and she herself was severely wounded. When the goblin raised its sword, it channeled a terrible dark energy. Catherine realized that this would be her end. She thought about the helpless boy, unable to protect himself. The monster struck at her with overwhelming force. Believing she would die, Catherine closed her eyes and accepted her fate. She waited a moment, but strangely, nothing happened. She slowly opened her eyes to understand what was going on. She widened her eyes, shocked by what she saw. The boy was holding the goblin's sword with just 2 fingers. The monster began to sweat and tremble, clearly intimidated. Even while holding the blade, the boy looked completely relaxed. The mage lying on the ground understood she had been saved by him. Still in a panic, she heard the boy ask if she could move. The protagonist looked at her and asked her to step back, as she would be hit when he moved. When she heard his request, she thought there would be no problem. She ran as fast as she could to hide among the trees. Then she decided to draw the monster's attention to him. He asked the monster if it had ever felt lightning before. The goblin didn't understand that strange electric provocation. The protagonist was holding the sword with just 2 fingers. He began to channel a strong electrical wave through the sword. The monster started to feel intimidated by all of it. It realized things were going to get difficult against that power. Suddenly, the sky began to cloud over. Signs of great thunderclaps appeared high above. After the clouds gathered, lightning began to strike. The protagonist called it Heavenly Lightning, his signature move. Summoning the lightning, a massive wave hit the goblin. It took the full electric discharge without being able to react. Once again, the young mage was deeply frightened. She realized that the stranger could summon real heavenly lightning. After everything calmed down, the protagonist called out to the girl. He said she could safely come out of hiding. When she stepped out, she saw that the goblin had been completely destroyed. The truth was that he had defeated a demonic beast. That creature was classified as level 3, according to hunters. The magic used was terrifying and extremely powerful. It had been years since the city had seen a mage. Her father used to say that powerful ones hid their mana presence. She looked at the stranger, unaware of his true nature. After a while, the two adventurers woke up confused. They were shocked to see a level 3 beast had been slain. Even more impressive was that a stranger with no visible mana had done it. The young woman said they should be thankful to be alive. If he had made a single wrong move, they would all be dead now. She called the stranger their savior in front of the two adventurers. As he walked away, she continued watching him with curiosity. She said she didn't know exactly what he was, but she was absolutely sure that he was incredible. Meanwhile, the protagonist sat down to meditate again. It was what he always did after fighting someone. The two adventurers approached and acknowledged his strength. They said they meant no offense and just wanted to talk. They asked about how the materials from the demonic beast would be divided. One of them looked at the protagonist and said he wanted a share. Though they thought it unfair, they insisted on an equal split. They claimed they had already apologized for their earlier behavior. Now they expected something fair for their help. The protagonist decided to be generous and tossed something. He threw them the goblin's toenail. Each of them took a nail. They looked very dissatisfied. One of them thought that kind of division was completely unfair. He said he had lost an arm in that dangerous fight, but the protagonist replied that he had treated the wound. He had used medicine and bandages without charging a single coin. He also didn't intend to share the loot with them. He told them he had already collected everything from the beast. He informed them that he was heading to the next village. He needed to claim the rewards promised for completing the mission. Meanwhile, one of the adventurers said he felt cheated. He insisted the stranger had taken everything valuable. The other knight whispered something in his ear. He said there was a bounty notice for the creature. He believed bringing the body would yield a huge fortune. But what they didn't know was something truly remarkable. The protagonist had extraordinarily sharp hearing. He had heard everything they whispered secretly, so he stopped and asked a simple, direct question. He wanted to know if the beast was worth a considerable sum. Upon hearing that, he decided he would take the creature with him. To exchange the items, he went to the Iron City. At the Hunters Association, he negotiated a level 3 beast. He received a total of 13,000 spirit stones for the trade. The amount pleased him greatly, bringing him immense satisfaction. He had been using spirit stones for a long time to cultivate. Even though they were of lower quality, they still worked well for his training. As he turned around, he noticed the two adventurers again. Knowing they wanted something, he quickly handed over 30 spirit stones. He asked them to take that thing and simply leave right away. He turned his back, saying he owed them nothing anymore. He was walking away when he felt a slight touch on his hand. A soft hand was gently holding his with a certain delicacy. He turned, curious, and looked at the person behind him. Looking her up and down, he saw that it was the mage. Catherine mentioned that she still didn't know his real name. He calmly replied that his name was Zhang Tianshun. After saying goodbye to them, he looked for a comfortable inn in the city. He went straight to the hot spring bath area. There he relaxed while reflecting on everything that had happened. He held in his hands the necklace taken from the goblin boss. That necklace had withstood an electric magic attack. He could feel a strong spiritual energy emanating from the small jewel. He thought it might be a truly valuable item. He decided to put it around his neck to analyze it more closely. With body heat, the necklace began to react. He was still asleep when the necklace started to awaken. His spiritual energy was slowly activating the hidden power within. Suddenly, ears began to emerge from beneath the water. A beautiful silhouette and a tail appeared before him. The female figure revealed herself, a young spiritual fox. She had been asleep for 5,000 years without any interruption. She was thrilled to be awakened by someone so handsome. She felt a deep desire to taste the spirituality of that young man. Just the sight of him sleeping was already overwhelming. Bai Ting approached, desire clearly written on her face. She wanted to touch him, even if just once. She took advantage of his sleep to slowly press her lips against his. By doing so, she absorbed part of the energy he emitted. She felt crazed by the immense spirituality within that sleeping body. A single kiss felt too little for such overwhelming magic. She emerged from the necklace and kissed the sleeping young man again. When she noticed he was waking up, she immediately jumped back. She thought it was better to be more cautious from then on. She said he had awakened her from a deep slumber. She asked if he knew exactly what he had done. He realized she had come out of the jade pendant. He noticed she had assumed a spiritual form with fox-like features. As he thought about it, he witnessed a surprising and strange scene. He saw the woman with an intense scent and overly seductive posture. She was staring at his body with a very interested look. She inhaled and exhaled a pink cloud around him. He started feeling strange effects from that magical smoke. He immediately suspected that she was trying something. The smoke was meant to confuse his mind. He stood up without realizing and slowly stepped out of the water. Now he was completely visible to the two female figures there. They struck suggestive poses in front of his exposed body. They asked if they could serve him during that moment of relaxation. They approached, wrapping their arms around his body. They said they could give him a massage to relieve physical tension. They suggested using their own bodies to make everything more pleasant. The fox watched from a distance, worried about the situation. She hoped he would resist the charming temptation being offered. She thought that if he gave in, there would be no more hope. If he failed, maybe she should return to eternal slumber. But she no longer knew how long she could hold out. The fox thought she would trap him in a spiritual illusion. Now she stood before him, completely unsure of what to do. It was she who was blushing, analyzing the young man in front of her. Meanwhile, he felt as light as the wind. He didn't realize he was out of the water, completely naked. After so long, the fox found herself speechless before him. After a while, the two naturally calmed down in that place. He had already hurriedly put on part of his clothes. They then began to talk more calmly in the thermal bath. She explained that she was the necklace of the celestial fox, an ancient spiritual treasure that had gained a physical form. After thousands of years, she had managed to awaken her spiritual essence. She thought she would sleep forever, but found a cultivator. She said she had cast a charming spell just as a test. She wanted to know if he truly was a cultivator. He confirmed it, and that left her quite confused. According to her, there were no more cultivators in the current world. She explained that 5,000 years ago there was a war. Cultivators and demons clashed in what was called the Great Spiritual War. All the great sects were ruined and completely wiped out. All the cultivators of that era were mercilessly slaughtered. The 8 powerful sects were destroyed during that ancient battle. Over time, the history of cultivators was forgotten. Other races emerged to fill the void that was left. Mermaids and elves became part of the continent's culture. Succubi and other unknown races also appeared in force. For 5,000 years, she remained completely dormant. She stopped sensing any presence linked to the old cultivators. That's why she found it strange that this young man had suddenly appeared. She wanted to know how he had survived all that time. He raised his hand to his head, confused about everything. He said he didn't remember anything from the past. She concluded that he had lost all his memories. She told him he shouldn't feel sad about that. He asked about the charming spell that had previously been used on her. He wanted to know if it tested her inner spiritual strength. He wanted to understand whether a spiritual treasure could still evolve. Even without cultivators nearby, was any progress still possible? She said that wasn't something simple anymore. The world was now infested with the demonic energy of the beasts. It was impossible to replenish spiritual energy in a normal way now. She said she felt something special flowing directly from him. That's why she asked to accompany him on his spiritual journey. She claimed to have a sharp perception of ancient ancestral treasures. Even in contaminated environments, she could easily sense hidden treasures. He liked treasures so much that he accepted immediately. Even the fox was surprised by how quickly he decided. She said she would need to absorb part of his spiritual energy. She sweetly asked if she could impose some extra personal conditions. She offered herself to him, should he desire any sort of favor. He replied that he didn't need any of that right now. He stated that his energy was more than enough to share peacefully. He simply reinforced his interest in finding hidden ancestral treasures. She confirmed everything, and they left together through Iron City. During the stroll, she wanted to confirm his name. She felt it sounded familiar even after sleeping for so long. As they walked, she sensed a strong energy approaching. She said there was an ancestral treasure in that very direction. She pointed her finger precisely toward the middle of the crowd. He already knew the place and decided to check it out immediately. He wanted to know if the fox could truly detect treasures. In Iron City's plaza, many people were gathered. The fox said it seemed they were celebrating something special. She mentioned she could feel the treasure right ahead of them. The protagonist thought they could enjoy the moment together too. But the fox doubted that and became more alert. She noticed a sword surrounded by 2 armed local guards. The protagonist figured the treasure must be that mystical sword. Everyone was waiting to see which young person would pass the ancestral trial. The fox asked an old man what was going on. He figured she was from some distant land. He said that sword was known throughout the entire city. He told the legend of the brave warrior who would pull it out. Only someone courageous could remove the sword from the stone. The fox looked at John, noticing his fixed gaze. He said the sword felt very familiar to him. It came from 5,000 years ago, according to the legend. The leader of the sword village had forged a legendary weapon, a blade so sharp it could slice even the wind. The sword had surpassed every other existing blade of its time. It needed a master who was worthy, wise, and extraordinary too. The master had once said no one was worthy, except the protagonist. Zhang had a flash of memory upon hearing that. Now he remembered that the ancestral sword had originally belonged to him. He also said he now remembered its name. With that, he headed straight for the firmly buried sword. But the adventurers crossed swords, blocking his way immediately. They warned that the sword was sacred to that city. Only authorized people could even approach the stone. The fox intervened, asking about the promised true warrior. The guards laughed and said that was just a legend. They said no one had managed to remove it in thousands of years. People in the plaza doubted the chances of that strange man. Even heirs from noble families had failed to retrieve the ancient sword. They claimed he too would be unable to accomplish such a feat. Zhang asked why he couldn't try like anyone else. He wanted to know if those two would really stop him. When they tried to block him again, the mage quickly stepped in. She stated that he was a guest of the respected Steve family. She asked who dared disrespect someone that important. The guards were shocked and immediately apologized. They never imagined he had that kind of connection. People were stunned by the unexpected revelation. The eldest daughter of the family confirmed that sensitive information. Upon seeing her savior, she turned red and quite embarrassed. She asked if he truly intended to draw the legendary sword. He confirmed it, but said he had been stopped earlier. The young woman reminded him that only those who passed the trial could do it. The fox whispered that no one else would be able to remove the sword. She said there was no reason for him to rush. The mage then used her special letter of recommendation. She declared that he could take part in the trial with that. Zhang asked if she would demand anything in return for the favor. When she said no, he asked for an additional letter. He wanted to ensure that the fox could freely accompany him too. That made Catherine uncomfortable, imagining something going on between them. In time, several days of intense preparations passed. Outside the city in the Phantom Valley, the trial would take place. The protagonist sensed the strong scent of dormant demonic beasts. It was emanating from every corner of that mysterious valley. Everyone was gathered in the Phantom Valley for the test. It seemed that all the participants had finally arrived at the site. The church leader announced that she would explain the rules shortly. She said they must return with 3 marked demonic cores. The church had placed the cores inside level 3 beasts. Everyone watched the priestess of the Holy Cross attentively. She was a psychic type of medium classification, ranked B. Nell stated that by noon they would bring the cores. Whoever brought them would officially pass the test and move on. The conclusion was that only 3 participants would be approved. Meanwhile, another participant arrived and drew everyone's attention. A cocky blonde guy said it would be easy for him. He believed the test level was suitable for his family. Upon seeing a young woman, he immediately tried to greet her arrogantly. He said it was too early for pointless celebrations. Meyer commented that the test had few active participants. After all, it only happened once every 3 years. To him, the low number was due to the extreme difficulty. Other participants started discussing this among themselves. Meyer said his family was renowned in the city. He was proud and provoked his rival with words. Carl noticed that young man would cause problems later on. Even so, he decided to stay calm and proceed alone. He believed that only those who survived would pass such a dangerous test. As he walked away, he passed near the protagonist with disdain. Zhang sensed the killing intent coming from that arrogant blonde. He recalled Catherine talking about the Asa family and Carl. He looked at the members of the Steve family gathered there. He found it strange they had sent someone so different. They had already investigated and considered Zhang an ordinary human. They said he had no developed psychic abilities. After all the rules were explained, Mel declared the test had begun. Everyone quickly rushed into the Phantom Valley. Carl and Meyer began racing side by side. Others tried to catch up, speeding from all directions. Carl realized the valley had completely different routes. Even so, he found the mission interesting and challenging. Standing at the second route, he sensed a dense demonic energy emerging. It was a strong presence, perhaps a powerful hidden beast. Meyer preferred the third route because of the breeze. He believed it meant a safe and clear path ahead. Others thought the first path was still the best. Despite the thorns, it seemed easier than the others. In the tent, the priestess questioned Catherine with direct suspicion. She wanted to know why she had recommended someone without abilities. Catherine replied that Zhang was stronger than they could imagine. She stated he was no ordinary human. She was certain he would complete the entire test. She said he was the most trustworthy man she knew. Meanwhile, Zhang and the fox were observing the path. They were thinking about what Catherine had said earlier. He used a branch to randomly choose a direction. The branch fell toward a dark and shadowy path. Even with the fox's warning, he chose to follow it. She was scared, thinking that path felt too strange. She saw several night birds and trembled, unable to hide it. Feeling insecure, she held his arm tightly. She asked if he could hear something coming from the forest. She said the energy was too strong to breathe properly. He felt she was squeezing his body too hard. As the noise increased, she became even more frightened. She moved closer to him, trembling with constant fear. When he gently moved her aside, they saw a figure. The fox asked what kind of creature that could be. John carefully observed the young woman floating before him. Despite the rags, her clothes had noticeable quality and value. He also noticed a thick aura completely surrounding her body. Under the shadow of the full moon, nocturnal birds flew over the forest. That only added to the fox's fear as she walked beside him. While looking at the ghost ahead, she was still holding his arm. The protagonist decided to act, saying he would approach the strange female figure. The fox tried to warn him that it might be a dangerous ghost, but he thought it could only be a lost girl, so he chose to approach, believing he understood the situation. With that in mind, he placed a hand on her shoulder. The young woman heard his voice just before feeling the gentle touch. Then that cursed face turned with a cruel and frightening laugh. However, the protagonist wasn't scared. He just thought the girl was strange. Right after that, he punched her, telling her to return to the shadows. The ghost didn't stand a chance, falling with her skull completely cracked. After that, he understood it really was a female spirit. The fox just wanted to follow the path and get out of that place. But he knew that wasn't the right decision. He then asked the fox to help him undress the ghost. The fox looked down, not believing what she had just heard. She thought he just wanted to look at the ghost's body. After all, he had clearly noticed that the girl had perfect and attractive curves. However, the man only wanted the dress the ghost was wearing. Even slightly worn, it was high quality and could be sold. Now the two of them analyzed if there were more ghosts along the shadowy path. Behind a tree, they noticed another ghost with a strange expression. She simply stared at the man as she felt his hand touch her shoulder. With a mocking tone, he stuck out his tongue at the frightened ghost. This time, it was the ghost who backed away trembling, kneeling on the ground. He liked what he saw since the dress looked well preserved. He already had several pieces and still wanted to collect more clothes. Wherever they went, they left ghosts collapsed on the ground, completely stripped. Meanwhile, on a thorny path, other test candidates were advancing. They complained about the delay in finding the core and feared the ghosts. They believed those beings ended up that way after eating raw human flesh. Now they were addicted, turned into creatures thirsty for that kind of food. Luckily, no curvy ghost had shown up around there yet. However, muscular and terrifyingly strong men emerged from the ground. They were hungry zombies, willing to devour anyone they saw. The team in the forest panicked upon seeing so many gathered. Besides being strong, those zombies were also agile and dangerously skilled. Because of that, they wiped out most of the group in seconds. Elsewhere in the forest, the protagonist was calmly walking with the fox. She held his arm tightly as they followed the narrow path ahead. That's when they heard a melody, a soft, chilling hum. The fox thought the protagonist was being reckless, even greedy. Still, she felt safe with him, despite the frightening scenery. Whenever she was with him, she felt nothing bad could happen there. Once again, a ghost appeared on the path, blocking the trail. Unlike the previous ones, she looked like a maid cosplay in provocative clothes. She said the two of them looked perfect to satisfy her hunger. But the protagonist wasn't interested in talking. He threw a sack on the ground. It was full of clothes from the other ghosts he had faced. He told her that even if she was different, she would lose her clothes soon too. The ghost interpreted that as desire, thinking he intended to use her. That's why, after hearing those direct words, the ghost was paralyzed. She wanted to understand the meaning behind those strange words about tearing her clothes off. Without hesitation, the man confirmed that it was exactly what he meant. This time, however, he was insolent, and the ghost didn't like it. She said she would use a magic cycle to punish him for mocking her. Within seconds, she summoned bats and called it the Scarlet Glimpse. The protagonist thought it was overkill, sending just little bats to try and hurt him. However, he didn't have time to react, as the fox moved quickly. As soon as she released her fire, the fox incinerated all the bats. The ghost then realized that the fox was a powerful magical creature. She said she couldn't believe she had slept for so many years, but recognized that flame. The protagonist watched, unsure whether she was underestimated or actually powerful. He said he would leave the bats to the fox while he faced the ghost. And since they were chatting while ignoring her presence, the ghost got even angrier. Leaping toward the ghost, he tried to reach her midair with a boost. He made it clear that, if the fox refused, he would take the opportunity himself. He raised his hand to touch and analyze where he could strike. In doing so, he ended up lightly brushing against the ghost's body. She blushed, not understanding why that man would touch her like that. Recovering quickly, she dodged and stepped back, feeling embarrassed and angry. She asked if something was wrong with him. Was he some kind of pervert? He asked her not to misunderstand. He was only examining the fabric. He wanted to confirm whether it was truly worth a fortune before tearing those clothes apart. That's why he began using his worldly martial arts with invisibility. Becoming invisible in front of her, he began his extremely fast and precise movements. Even the fox was impressed by his ability to strip clothing. He was so fast that even the ghost couldn't react properly. In an instant, her clothes, shoes, and accessories had all been completely removed. When he stripped everything off, something fell from the ghost's body. It was a draconic stone, the core needed to complete the test. The fox realized the core had been hidden inside the ghost's body. Then she asked what he intended to do now with that demonic stone. Eagerly he said there were other monsters around and he wasn't going to stop. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the valley, an intense battle was taking place. Meyer was doing everything he could to eliminate a gigantic and strong demonic monster. His goal was clear, to also obtain a powerful monster stone. When he defeated the creature, he received the core of a level 3 beast. But while celebrating, a rival appeared, saying he didn't trust him. Apparently, the other man had also obtained a core for the test. He called Meyer lucky, mocking him with an arrogant and provocative smile. Meyer knew Carl and was well aware that he was a despicable person. He wanted to know what Carl intended by approaching with such a threatening look. The blonde opponent revealed he had his own demonic stone hidden away. Meyer was surprised, since he already had his own core secured. Then he understood, Carl was there to ruthlessly steal his life. He drew his sword and got ready. He wouldn't allow that to happen. Carl assumed his wicked stance, determined to eliminate his rival immediately. Even though they were rivals, the young man never expected such a treacherous ambush to happen. Even so, he stepped forward, showing his courage. After gaining momentum, he launched himself into the air to strike directly at his enemy. If he sought death, he would find it in the right hands. However, Carl had already planned everything in advance and felt confident of victory. Meyer's sword clashed with the blonde enemy's dagger. The two began exchanging blows with extreme speed and precision. They were so fast that it was hard to follow their intense movements. The armored young man was surprised by the strength of that deceitful blonde. Even so, he knew that Carl alone wouldn't be able to defeat him in that battle. But Carl smiled and asked why he thought that. He then announced he wasn't alone, revealing something concerning to his opponent. At that moment, an arrow was launched directly toward his neck. The young man tried to react but didn't have time to dodge properly. The arrow pierced his neck, spreading poison throughout his body. Meyer clearly saw that he had been betrayed by someone very close. His aide, now an enemy, had switched sides for political interest. That traitor said that wise men adapt to dominant power, and the Asta family represented power, influence, and control within that valley. Johann, from the Walton family, revealed his psychic power by openly betraying Meyer. Even wounded, the armored young man promised punishment for such vile betrayal. With the dagger at his neck, Carl said nothing would leave from there. Nothing in the valley would be known by anyone outside the test. Right after, Carl delivered the final blow without showing a shred of human pity. He called Meyer a fool for trusting so much in weak and imperfect people. Now lying on the ground was someone who had fought with dignity for years. At least he died by the sword of someone he truly respected. While stepping on the fallen body, the traitor questioned him about the deal. Carl replied coldly that everything in the valley ended right there. With those words, he prepared to cut off the traitor's head as well. He did so without hesitation, eliminating any conscious witness remaining. He then declared that after eliminating his greatest enemy, there would be no survivors. He felt relieved, as if lifting a heavy burden off his shoulders. However, an immense power suddenly made his entire body tremble. The energy was so intense that Carl dropped to his knees on the ground. He knew that went beyond the limits of any level 3 beast. He thought it might be something even stronger and more dangerous ahead. He looked toward the direction from which that terrifying tremor came. He imagined what could be revealing itself in that dark forest area. Not only Carl felt it, the test organizers noticed it too. Priestess Mel identified that the power came from a superior beast. To her, it could only be a level 4 demonic creature, and to face it, at least 3 rank B hunters would be needed. As Catherine heard that, she wondered if the protagonist was safe there. Even worried, something terrible appeared before everyone's eyes. Demonic wings were revealed, black as the darkest night. A demon with glowing eyes and a stone embedded in its forehead. The creature was a level 4 beast with a devastating aura. Standing in front of it were only the protagonist and his fox companion. The fox suggested they retreat, since the beast hadn't noticed them yet, but the protagonist replied that they had promised to defeat all the beasts present. The statue knew the humans could see it, yet they didn't run. It concluded that its power was preventing the weak humans from fleeing. Upon hearing that, the fox turned to see the reaction. The protagonist was in disbelief at what he heard in that moment. There was nothing but the stone embedded in the monster's forehead. He was already thinking what kind of lunatic would flee from so much money. Those words sounded strange to the beast, which didn't understand. It didn't understand why the human only talked about money. Not wanting to waste time, the protagonist charged at the statue. First, he gave it a strong slap, aiming at the stone in its forehead. He wanted to rip it off immediately and end that fight quickly. However, all he managed was to launch the gargoyle far away. The strike was so intense it tore through the entire ground. The beast slid, carving a long trench through the earth. When it stopped, it felt that something was wrong with that human. There was no visible physical power, but the impact really hurt. It thought that, lacking intelligence, the human was just using brute strength. In its thoughts, the protagonist was nothing more than a musclehead junkie. While the beast pondered, the protagonist charged again with determination. The gargoyle thought he was just another arrogant human. Then it decided to coat itself in a strong mineral to resist any attack. It was sure that the granite form would protect it. While thinking it was safe, it took a devastating punch to the chest. The impact cracked its entire protective skin layer. Even so, it refused to believe it was losing to a human. Once again, it was hurled far away by a single blow. As the monster flew, the fox ran toward the protagonist. She wanted to know what was going through his head. The protagonist asked if she was okay after the fight. She thanked him, but he was focused on the package she carried. He quickly noticed a demonic energy emanating from that box. The aura around it felt extremely intense and far too dangerous. He thought the energy was coming from the beast they had faced earlier. At that moment, the transformed gargoyle appeared in their line of sight. It was the same monster, now completely altered and even more threatening. Satisfied, it said it hadn't shown its true form in a long time. That's why it was excited to eliminate its enemies. It struck the ground with its trident, preparing a powerful blow. It formed a circle around them and announced a new technique. It would call it Invasion of Darkness with all its might. The fox and the protagonist waited to see the outcome. The protagonist quickly realized that the creature's breath was poisonous. The monster said its aura both repelled enemies and poisoned them. Meanwhile, at the entrance of Phantom Valley, everyone was summoned. Mel, the priestess, Catherine the mage, and her friend were worried. Catherine could only think about her new friend, Zhang Tanshan, and waited. During the battle, the beast warned that everything would soon be contaminated. The protagonist ignored the gargoyle and asked the fox if she was alright. Then he cast a stream of golden energy in her direction. The energy wrapped around the girl like a barrier, protecting her from the poison. He said it was the golden pearl of protection against poisonous gases. She grew concerned, thinking he should protect himself instead, but he explained that she had promised to protect his valuable rag. At that moment, she widened her eyes, realizing what truly mattered to him. The protagonist was only thinking that a solid punch would end it all. He knew the toxin would build up, but he could endure it for a while. Meanwhile, the opponent found it odd that he was caring for someone else. With hand movements, he began summoning spirits and ancestral stars. He used elves, ghost adventurers, and the 7 stars of Exuanshan. The gargoyle didn't understand the gestures, only watched in tense confusion. The fox recognized the enchantment as an ancient Exuanshan sect technique. She remembered the 5 thunder laws that could repel lightning. Thus, the protagonist continued evoking magic, summoning spirits of the air. He called for the elemental Xuan Nu to appear and obey his command. With the final words, he performed the powerful law of 5 thunders. He formed a sphere in his hand, the evil slaying thunder. The gargoyle found it interesting but quickly responded with strength. It created a larger sphere called the Orb of Arcane Darkness. It hurled it while screaming for the human to finally accept his own death. But the protagonist thought his opponent was mediocre, naive, and far too predictable. He said that wasn't magic, it was an immortal art. It was the secret technique of the ancestral celestial thunder sect. He launched his sphere, which pierced straight through the enemy's larger spell. The beast was stunned, unable to accept what had just happened. It believed it was impossible to penetrate the Orb of Darkness with inferior magic. If it were really true, then its defeat was already guaranteed. Now it didn't know what to do since it had received direct orders. Its master had commanded it to prevent any external disruption. When the sphere fulfilled its purpose, it knew it had failed. While all that unfolded, the fox watched with eyes glowing brightly. She realized that this wasn't magic, it was pure concentrated energy. Even from afar, the priestess Mel felt the tremor from that collision. Frightened, she noticed the explosion surpassed the level of a stage 4 beast. She knew the power level reached was far too dangerous to ignore. The only viable solution was to request aid from the Holy Cross. In truth, that entire night, Phantom Valley was destroyed. Zhang Tanshan caused such destruction with his uncontrollable power. The beast fell scorched, defeated by the devastating energy of the technique. The protagonist figured he might have overdone it just a little. He took the stone from the gargoyle's forehead, now feeling relieved. The demonic core was still intact, just as he had hoped. Despite that, the fox was still worried about his poisoning. So he sat down, saying he would meditate to heal himself. The toxin would naturally be expelled during his energy circulation process. However, the fox had a different view of that peculiar situation. She believed meditation or prolonged magical effort wasn't necessary. When he asked what she meant, she turned red. She seemed to be gathering all her breath, focusing silently. Suddenly, she brought her lips to his with unexpected firmness. She was determined to heal him using her own special method. The fox did that to extract the poison more quickly. The venom was circulating through her master's blood at an alarming speed. The protagonist noticed that the fox was genuinely trying to help him. She was drawing the toxin out by using suction with her lips. Initially reluctant, he closed his eyes and let it happen. After the procedure, the fox still looked visibly embarrassed. She backed away slowly as he said something sarcastic. He commented that he could remove the poison on his own. She grew worried that he was thinking something like that. She said she would be fine, as she was still conscious. She asked for his spiritual energy and told him not to leave her side. She changed the subject and spoke about the Exuanshan sect. She wanted to know if he knew anything about it. However, seeing that he didn't remember, she dropped the topic. In the Phantom Village, everyone was on high alert due to the threat. They believed the horrid beast could appear at any moment. Priestess Mel thought it necessary to summon rank S warriors. The guards trembled in fear under so much pressure. The situation worsened when they saw 2 figures in the distance. Frightened, the priestess asked everyone to pay attention to whoever was approaching. Everyone was shocked to recognize the protagonist and the fox. He was calmly walking, carrying the defeated beast on his shoulders. He asked if something serious had happened there. The fox was carrying clothes taken from the defeated female ghosts. The entire situation stunned the priestess and her adventurers. She recognized the aura of the level 4 beast. She suspected the earlier explosion had something to do with him. Catherine became excited upon seeing the protagonist alive again, but the jealous blonde became furious and suspicious. He believed no one should surpass his own combat feats. The newcomer dropped the beast on the ground effortlessly. Then he even kicked the defeated body a few times. He said beast hunters should inspect the corpse. He also commented on the clothes from the female ghosts. The priestess was horrified upon hearing such an absurd revelation. She thought about the time they had spent gathering garments. Even so, they had faced a level 4 beast. Soon after their return, another unexpected visitor arrived. A high-class demoness had come to investigate her mountain. She couldn't believe someone had destroyed her personal territory. She felt that the city's newcomers were gaining power. Looking toward the crater, she sensed a strange energy. She made stones levitate and noticed an essence within them. Spiritual fragments appeared as traces of an immortal battle. That was strange to her. It brought an unusual sensation. It had been a long time since she felt anything like that. After the test commotion ended, they sold everything they had found together. After that, everyone returned to the Sacred Sword Plaza, waiting for the final results. Priestess Mel said that despite all the twists, everything ended without issue. She said there were 2 finalists, the blonde from the Assis family, talented and strong. The young man had 2 level 3 demonic cores, but he was still unsatisfied. His opponent had a level 4 beast's demonic stone, which was a significant advantage. He tried to provoke the protagonist with malice, but the latter wasn't even listening. Meanwhile, Mel explained that passing the test granted the right to the sword. The blonde young man stepped up first, saying he trusted in his family's strength. He gripped the sword's hilt tightly, certain he would pull it out easily. He channeled mana into his movement, believing he would demonstrate talent and power. Even sweating, straining everything, and trying hard, he had no real success. He pushed so hard that, in the end, he just trembled and collapsed to the ground. Lying there, he thought that if he couldn't do it, then no one else could. People began to leave, thinking no one would be able to claim the sword. Catherine and Bai King were annoyed, as no one wanted to see the protagonist. Carl, standing next to Mel, wore a look of pure disdain. Despite that, the protagonist acted and took his place in the correct spot. Before anything, he looked at the sword, which seemed to shine upon seeing him. He heard the sword speaking, saying it had waited for him for centuries. The sword said more than 5,000 years had already passed. It recalled when they were champions in the Flying Sword Tournament 10 years ago. It also spoke of their victories together in sect worlds with epic battles. The protagonist sensed the sword's core was excited about the reunion. He calmed the sword, saying he would pull it out and they would leave together. As he touched it and pulled lightly, signs showed the sword was about to be released. A bright light appeared, and everyone began to wonder what was happening. They then realized the sword was no longer resting in the stone as before. He lifted it with pride, and upon naming it, the sword expressed great inner joy. The crowd didn't share the excitement. They didn't understand how he had claimed it. More impressively, the sword had taken the spiritual form of a blue dragon. Now the dragon was speaking to him. It was a legendary ancestral artifact. The sword Yulong, manifested as a dragon, started rambling with its chatter. Annoyed, the protagonist complained, saying she should have stayed in the stone. Everyone was terrified, as the sacred sword had truly transformed visibly. The dragon said it was a miracle that its master had survived that ancient battle. Even after millennia, the sword's brilliance still shone with eternal vigor. While they argued, a noble mage from the city watched them quietly. She gathered her courage and congratulated the protagonist for reclaiming his sword with mastery. He thanked her for the recommendation letter. She replied it was nothing. She also noticed the fox joyfully running straight into his arms. Without thinking, the fox jumped and squeezed him with her upper body. Catherine, gathering the courage to confess her feelings, could only watch. Catherine looked at the fox hugging him, saying that following him had been wonderful. Meanwhile, he could barely breathe, as his face was pressed tightly against her body. The young red-haired mage simply sat down, wondering how things had turned out like that. Perhaps due to shyness, she believed she had no chance against the fox. Firm footsteps from the priestess Mel were heard, declaring that the legend was real. She spoke of the hero's feats, saying she was the host of the ceremony. For that reason, she asked to hold the legendary sword that now belonged to the hero. Despite the strange request, he said she could hold it, even though it was heavy. He placed the fox on the ground and extended his arm with the sword. She felt the strength of the hilt as she touched it, impressed by the energy. The sword was incredibly heavy, and it ended up falling to the ground with impact. It left a deep mark in the ground, perfectly molding to the surface. The protagonist said it wasn't his fault, she just didn't hold it properly. The fox, watching, thought it was a primordial level ancestral weapon. She knew only spiritual cultivators could wield it, and the hero knew that too. He lifted the sword again, noticing dirt left by the priestess's hand. She immediately realized he expected her to pay for the cleaning. She believed he had done it on purpose, since he seemed very meticulous about everything. At that moment, firm footsteps echoed, and someone of importance approached. The man introduced himself, saying he was the leader of the noble Steve family. He said he had prepared a banquet and wanted to personally invite the hero. The priestess mentioned that this was Catherine's father. She also said the banquet was in honor of the sacred sword having been drawn. The hero thought about the possible benefits and decided to accept the formal invitation. But he looked at Catherine sulking in a corner. So he approached her, letting her know her father had extended the invitation. She barely heard his words, only noticing how close he was. Sitting together on the ground, he said her behavior seemed strange to him at that moment. Sis believed ancient heroes acted differently, so she didn't judge his actions. Moments later, at the Stephen mansion, everyone was at the gates, admiring the luxurious architecture. The protagonist observed the mansion's valuable details with great attention. He knew there were countless riches there, so he approached Catherine's father. The man said this was the hero of Iron City. For that reason, he would offer him all necessary support, including public recognition and aid. At the lavish table with many dishes, the hero noticed Catherine wasn't eating. He asked if she didn't like the food, while the fox observed everything silently. She knew true cultivators didn't need to eat. They lived solely on spiritual energy. She suspected the protagonist was an ancestral cultivator, simply without memories of his past. Moments later, the sword turned back into a dragon, saying it was feeling somewhat satisfied now. It ignored the protagonist's orders, who didn't want it to appear again. Catherine tried to start a conversation, asking about the demonic core. She said cores were valuable materials found only in high-level monsters. They could be used to strengthen armor and weapons with magical properties. As she spoke, the dragon watched in fascination, seemingly interested in those stones. The hero was just thinking he could become rich by selling that powerful core. He didn't realize the blue dragon had already swallowed the valuable core. Then asked Zhang Tianshan if there were more of those since it liked the taste. The hero's expression changed, realizing the dragon had eaten all his savings. The dragon didn't understand what was happening to it. To the hero, it was indeed a huge problem. He considered the dragon an unforgivable traitor. He wanted it to return the 2 cores immediately, but Catherine's father asked the hero to stop. He said it could damage the city's sacred sword. He stated that since the sword had eaten the demonic core, he would compensate the hero with a spacious mansion. While he spoke, the blue dragon felt a powerful energy. It exploded inside him like an immense and uncontrollable force. He told the hero it felt like he had gotten stronger, thanks to the demonic cores he had eaten earlier. Bai King said that such a thing was indeed possible. After all, the blue dragon was a truly legendary sword. As they talked, someone arrived asking for everyone's attention. It was the butler bringing gifts from the 3 leading families. Families from the Church of the Holy Cross offering gifts to the hero. This greatly lifted the greedy protagonist's mood. He wanted to receive all the gifts as soon as possible. The Welton family sent 30,000 sparkling spirit stones. They also sent documents for a mansion in Iron City. The fox thought those families were being very generous, but the hero took the documents and spoke bluntly. He said the owner had already promised him the mansion earlier. He ordered the documents to be sold and all the money delivered. He did the same with a golden and diamond-covered armor set. He said it was too heavy and that he just wanted the money. Lastly, the Asif family brought 3 intimate maids. The protagonist asked how intimate they could really be. He noticed they were dressed appropriately. They said they were in love with the hero's handsome face. They promised to do absolutely anything he wanted. One of them got very close and repeated that she would do anything. While they offered their talents, Catherine had another jealous outburst. The hero observed the 3 of them carefully, and he asked again if they would really do anything for him. One blushed and said she would perform any procedure necessary. The protagonist immediately turned back to the butler. He ordered him to sell the 3 of them and hand over the money. They were shocked to be coldly rejected by the hero. The tension was broken when Priestess Mel entered. She arrived carrying a shining knight's medal. She wanted to present it to Zhang Tianshan for drawing the legendary sword. The first question was whether the medal had any value. He wanted to know if he could trade it for some money. She explained that it represented honor and was priceless. It was worth more than gold, especially within the church. Still doubtful, he decided to keep the medal for now, but the priestess seemed to want something more than that. She shyly asked if she could touch his body. Catherine reacted badly, and Bai King got irritated too. Seeing this, the priestess quickly apologized to both of them. She said she felt a special magic coming from the hero. Touching him was necessary to identify that strange energy. The mage and the fox were full of doubts. They suspected the priestess wanted something more than just energy. The hero noticed she was touching too much and spoke seriously. He said he would start charging her if she continued like that. She was still touching his arms, trying to focus. She wanted to identify the traces of that unknown mental force. Since it wasn't working, she tried a more aggressive approach. The technique made her feel something strange. She collapsed on the floor, suddenly very weak. Sweating, she said she felt a strange power. It was similar to what she had sensed from the legendary sword. After feeling the energy, Priestess Mel screamed out loud. The scream was so loud it could be heard from afar. Overwhelmed by the presence, she collapsed on all fours. Meanwhile, the protagonist sensed a powerful demonic presence coming from outside. It was an out-of-control red dragon, threatening the city's citizens. In the middle of its frenzy, it unleashed flames everywhere. A young woman was struck, seeing a monster from ancient legends. She looked up and saw the real creature. The famous draconic beast was about to destroy everything. Iron City was now its main target. A fireball was launched toward the city. The young woman trembled, thinking these were her final moments. Almost instantly, the hero appeared in front of her bravely. He said she didn't need to be afraid of anything. He began to rapidly suck in the air around them. Without oxygen, the fire lost its power and dissipated. The three ladies ran to the top of the mansion. They wanted to witness all the incredible feats performed by the protagonist. Bai Ting knew this was just another normal occurrence. The other girls still weren't fully used to it. She told an old legend from Iron City. This story was as ancient as the sacred sword itself. It said the dragon was drawn to a special energy. It had attacked the city several times because of that force. Even mental force users had failed to defeat that creature. This time, all hope rested on the new hero. Zhang Tanshan, the protagonist, was the hero who had now appeared. Luckily, the dragon had weakened over the centuries. To the fox, something felt suspicious about this recent attack. She found it odd that the monster was drawn by a treasure. Maybe the dragon was somehow connected to the Yulong sword. Even so, the priestess believed everything would be alright. The protagonist reminded the girl about the protection fees. Since she had no spiritual stones, she tried to make another offer. She asked if she could pay by offering her services to the hero. But the dragon was approaching, and the mood shifted. Seeing this, the girl stopped with the suggestive talk and grew fearful. The protagonist noticed something strangely off about the dragon's behavior. It was diving headfirst as if in total desperation. He then gave it a light slap and told it to sit down. The impact made the dragon spin several times in the air. After that, it crashed hard into the city ground. The shock was so intense that everything began to shake. The dust settled, revealing the frightened and confused dragon. Zhang Tanshan realized its emotions were completely unstable. The diagnosis was madness caused by extreme spiritual pain. He noticed spiritual energy was flowing from within the creature. That's when the sword warned him that the dragon was a treasure. Suddenly, the sword turned into a blue dragon and explained. It said that during the war, the dragon had swallowed a treasure. Since then, it had been affected by the sword's spiritual energy. That's why it kept insisting for long to retrieve the item. The protagonist found it interesting to gain yet another legendary treasure. Then he fiercely kicked the dragon in the face. He said he would show no mercy, not even if it played dead. The blow launched the dragon far away, headfirst. The protagonist controlled his strength to avoid destroying the treasure. He knew overdoing it could ruin the rare item, so he used only 1/10 of his total strength. He channeled that power into the sword and struck the dragon. He did this with the goal of retrieving only the treasure. The blow slightly cut through the thick layer of dark hide. It was enough to cause the beast intense pain. The pain made it feel the urge to vomit, and so it threw up the relic that had bothered it for years. The fox noticed that the hero's method worked perfectly. After recovering the treasure, the protagonist raised it proudly. It was an ancient item called the Shining Millennial Mirror. The dimension inside the mirror was simply called Millennium. The protagonist entered and found that magical alternate space fascinating. The dragon explained that one could also cultivate inside. It was a pocket dimension ideal for uninterrupted cultivation. That's when he heard the dragon call him Master Xuantian. Then it revealed the hero's name and said it remembered. Little by little, the dragon regained its sanity and continued speaking. It said the protagonist had fought bravely until the end, but it doubted he had survived the terrible demon god. After hearing the dragon, the hero grew curious. He wanted to understand why it said he wasn't himself. The dragon explained that the face was the same, but different. The aura had completely changed since the known past. It also said the strength was totally different from before. It wondered how he was still alive after all that. With red eyes full of hatred, the dragon shouted in fury. It called it an insult to the king of the demonic realm. This king was the demon god, unifier of the evil forces. Consumed by rage, the dragon formed a massive sphere. Then it unleashed the attack called Demonic Dragon's Breath. The hero's luck was that they were in the mirror dimension. Iron City wouldn't suffer from that destructive power. The hero simply hurled his sword against the flaming sphere. Then he called Yu Long and ordered him to fly out. Thus, the blue dragon emerged from within the sacred sword. He took the entire blow head-on without hesitation or retreat, but he started acting strangely after absorbing so much energy. The protagonist was disappointed with his dragon's performance. Both were dragons, but Yu Long now seemed far inferior. Even so, everything went according to Zhang Tianshan's earlier plan. After that, the protagonist and sword conversed inside the alternate dimension. Yu Long, still in dragon form, was strongly tempted. He desired the demonic core that the other dragon possessed. The hero would only get it to him if Yu Long told the truth. He wanted to know what it meant not to be himself. With a strong craving to eat, the dragon decided to confess. He said that only a fragment of the soul had survived. That's why his personality was different from the original master. That's when the hero remembered something. Since he became aware, he had been asleep inside a tree, until a lightning bolt struck and set him free. He emerged from the tree and split it in half instantly. The dragon said that explained everything perfectly. Xuan Yuan was a primordial tree of pure spiritual energy. That tree protected his energy, keeping it entirely free from corruption. The dragon told how, 5,000 years ago, the demonic realm gave birth to the feared demon god. He possessed an absolutely unmatched strength among all beings. To break the prophecy, he created countless destructive demonic weapons. The cultivators suffered heavy losses during that long and tragic war, but the master of the Xinhuan Tian sect fought until death. He used everything he had to seal the demon god. He sealed part of him inside his own soul, completely sacrificing himself. Thus, he died along with the enemy and his own techniques. The dragon revealed that it didn't know his original form, but now it knew that it inherited the master's name. It said the hero should continue the sacred mission, to rebuild the glory of the cultivator's realm with honorable vengeance. Zhang Tanshen, however, didn't like that sudden heavy responsibility. He didn't want to take on someone else's destiny or reject his own identity. He preferred to leave that mission to someone more spiritually devoted. The dragon was surprised. It thought he wouldn't refuse. It said they needed to search for the lost soul fragments. It tried to convince him. The fragments contained incredible techniques and powers. He could dominate entire territories with the forgotten knowledge of the past. It called the fragments priceless treasures, more valuable than anything else. That detail immediately caught the protagonist's attention. He then decided to take concrete action with great determination. He said it was time to leave Iron City. He would go after the scattered fragments of the sect master. Meanwhile, in another place, something very dark was happening. The blue-haired demon was reporting to the sovereign. She informed them that the corrupted demonic control Q was in her possession. The master, intrigued, pulled the Q using pure energy. She confirmed upon seeing it that it was the real corrupted object. Even after 5,000 years, it still held intense demonic power. The subordinate wanted to report another important and unexpected matter. She said there was a cultivator fighting in Iron City. Upon hearing that, the demon reacted differently. She transformed into her original form, with horns and large wings. She thought it was impossible that cultivators still existed in that corrupted world. For that reason, she ordered them to bring his head immediately. Iron City was calm on that final silent night. It was the last night the hero would spend there. In Priestess Mel's chambers, there was growing anxiety. She knew that man was no ordinary person. He had demonstrated a special magical power, and she wondered where he was. She struggled with the thoughts invading her entire mind. She believed certain desires should be suppressed through pure discipline. In Catherine's room, something very similar was happening. The fox was closely watching the strange movements of the restless young woman. Catherine was in the bathtub, seeming agitated by persistent thoughts. She thought about the hero leaving and the pain of losing him. She wondered if they would see each other again after this. She wanted to confess her love, but didn't know how to act. She found confessions difficult and always very embarrassing. Meanwhile, Bai Qing silently admired Catherine's body. She realized Catherine was beautiful and had impressive curves. Even with her own interests, she decided to help her with this romantic mission. She blew her fox breath, creating a pink mist. The mist surrounded Catherine and completely altered her senses. Even her body became warmer and her mind bolder. At that moment, the protagonist called out to Catherine from outside. He said he was leaving and just wanted to say goodbye. He went to her room and saw the outfit. He found the way she was dressed strange now. He asked if the fox had done anything suspicious. She replied that it was all by her own will. Even so, the hero remained suspicious, finding the scene strange. He said it was dangerous to wear so little. He thanked her for the help and said he would repay her in the future. He also stated he didn't want to disturb the young woman's rest. When he turned to leave, Catherine hugged him from behind. She said she didn't want him to go so soon. She admitted she had fallen in love and would suffer sleeping without him. She asked him to leave her with a special memory before leaving. That worried the hero. It didn't sound like something she would normally say. He again suspected Bai Qing's magical influence on the girl. To prove she was lucid, Catherine removed her own clothes. The next day, everything seemed normal in Iron City. The hero was leaving the place, heading toward the unknown. During the journey, Bai Qing noticed his constant silence. He seemed distracted, lost in thought, with a distant gaze. With an ironic tone, the fox asked if he had slept well. Immediately, he thought of Catherine with affection and fondness. His expression changed, and he answered with her own words. The fox blinked, believing she had successfully united the new couple. Before she could explain further, footsteps were heard ahead. The fearless Carl from the Asa family had appeared again. He thought he could easily stop the hero's departure. The fox found it amusing that a weak young man would try that. Carl said he wasn't alone in that planned ambush. At that moment, a red-haired woman emerged from behind a tree. She said the sword belonged to Iron City. That redhead was from the Asa family and Carl's mother. Her name was Jane, a powerful level S psychic. She ordered them to hand over the sword immediately and without resistance. She promised that if they did, they wouldn't be bothered by the family again. While Jane spoke, another man appeared in a threatening manner. He also wanted the sword, and perhaps his life. He was from the Walton family, known as the Fierce Lightning Blade. He accused the protagonist of eliminating John during the test. Another man appeared, Meyer's father, also seeking personal revenge. He was Alan from the Point family, another level S psychic. Carl felt in control, seeing everyone on his side. He said they were all furious with the outsiders' actions. John Tanshen didn't think it was fair to be blamed for everything, but it didn't matter whether they were level S or not. He declared that anyone who blocked his path would deeply regret it. The blonde young man thought the protagonist needed a limit to his arrogance. Now he believed that with the help of level S psychics, he could control everything. But the cultivator thought that if they attacked, he wouldn't hold back. The first to face him was the swordsman who had called him arrogant. He claimed to be a level S psychic, then summoned a powerful lightning bolt. The electric blade shot from his sword and flew toward the protagonist. The protagonist wasn't impressed and launched the same power in different form. His attack was a furious lightning dragon, imposing and far too fierce. The dragon-shaped lightning bolts completely devoured the swordsman's attack. The knight was dumbfounded to realize his thunder had been easily nullified. But the worst part was facing the new dragon-shaped counterattack. Alan reacted quickly, protecting the group with his holy light shield. The impact was so intense that he nearly failed to block it with his sacred barrier. Alan's arm went numb after resisting such incomprehensible and brutal force. He now realized that man was far stronger than he appeared to be. After observing the damage, he thought that attack was simply unthinkable. The redhead thought her S-ranked allies had gotten way too rusty. Even while amused, she couldn't hold back, remembering the Assis family's glory. She said it would be disgraceful to lose to him, a true family stain. With that, she lashed her whip in their direction without much thought. The redhead shouted that this was the limit of how far they would advance. However, neither the fox nor the protagonist seemed impressed by the attack. Both dodged effortlessly while the woman began to reconsider her decisions. She claimed she could strike light itself to death if she wanted to. She believed her whip lashes were enough to crush any defense there. After so many hits, she thought she had finally defeated them for good. Alan thought even his holy light defense would suffer from that. The redhead's son also believed in his whip-wielding mother's absolute victory. However, no one realized that the protagonist had protected the fox and blocked everything. He was holding the whip firmly, smiling inside his magical protective sphere. He asked if that little whip was the best she could do. He looked at the redhead with desire, saying her outfit looked far too interesting. He declared that she should take it off with full conviction and complete casualness. Trying to help, he pulled the whip, bringing her along with it. Upon realizing this, the woman grew worried about his indecent words. He directly stated that he truly intended to remove her clothes. With her honor at stake, she let go of the whip, preferring to preserve her dignity. She quickly returned to her allies, visibly flushed and embarrassed. Her companions noticed her blushing face but said nothing. Carl was now questioning everything, as even the strongest were failing. It was ridiculous to think someone without psychic powers could defeat them like that. The protagonist, however, ignored everyone and provoked them with a sarcastic and direct tone. He asked what they would do now, after all their previous arrogant words. Since no one attacked him, he declared he would strike back without mercy. He stopped in front of the blonde guy, who trembled under his oppressive aura. He said he had learned fencing 2 days ago, but was already out of practice. He said he would test his new technique right there, naked fencing. He tried to strip the boy without damaging his clothes, but completely failed. The garments fell apart, leaving the blonde exposed in front of everyone. The boy blushed and grew furious upon realizing he was naked in public. After noticing his technique was rusty, he said it was a shame. While he lamented, the blonde raged, thinking his behavior was worse than that of a bastard. The protagonist thought it was the blonde's fault for being unable to protect his own clothes, but he saw no problem with it. Now he would try the same with the mother. He approached her, politely asking her not to move for now. Then, with a few precise moves, he launched the woman upward. He needed her to stay still in order to remove her clothes gently. The redhead, agile, quickly escaped and thought he was far too insolent. She thought his moves were shady and wanted to understand his intentions in trying to undress her. Now furious, she screamed that for honor's sake, she would have to take his life. She claimed she wasn't immoral and only used magic for defense, but he had crossed the line, so she would now show the power of the Asa family. She summoned a magical storm that fired multiple destructive bullets at him. The protagonist dodged everything, thinking she should be less persistent. He needed the money, so he couldn't afford to flee. The woman screamed that the bullets would catch him no matter where he went. Before anything else, he decided to protect the fox and asked her not to move. He told the fox everything was fine, It was just a bit of magic. Then he looked to the sky and shifted his focus back to the redhead. He knew she couldn't match his speed, which gave him complete advantage. Meanwhile, the fox thought it was strange that he vanished during the chaos of battle. However, she couldn't track his fast movements and lost visual control. In the blink of an eye, the protagonist appeared in front of the furious redhead. He asked if she still believed he truly wanted her body. He was annoyed that she didn't understand he only wanted her clothes to sell. With finesse, he cut the upper straps holding her outfit at the shoulder. Right after, he also cut the waist straps with total precision. That way, he'd lose little fabric and still sell the outfit at a good price. But the woman didn't see it that way, screaming that he was a perverted demon. From the beginning, all he was after was her whip. He intended to immobilize her for a while and keep her out of the battle. He threw the whip upward as if taming a wild beast. Then he managed to tie her up tightly, ensuring she was completely restrained. The redhead thought that, even at her age, she was still being targeted because of her attractive body. Meanwhile, the blonde boy was shouting, demanding the beast stay away from his mother. The only one who knew the truth was the fox, but she remained silent. She didn't bother explaining, knowing he only wanted clothes. She also knew that sometimes he went too far in complicated things. The blonde asked the S-rank allies for help dealing with the enemy. They replied that they were preparing a powerful joint technique. Meanwhile, the lightning master focused all his static electricity. His partner lit up with golden energy, preparing his attack with intense concentration. Alan was determined to fight with everything he had, without hesitation. The protagonist found it interesting, admiring the willpower of the two opponents. The enemy explained that his transformation was more than just a change in size. His power also increased exponentially, becoming almost divine. He was determined to prove that his strength could challenge even a god. He raised his sword and launched a direct strike at the protagonist. He was fully aware that the attack could completely destroy him. Golden light shone from his eyes, certain he had ended the fight. However, he was surprised to hear the protagonist say the strike wasn't bad. With a small sword, the protagonist efficiently blocked the giant blade. Zhang Tanshen made it clear that he hated being compared to any false deity. He was willing to teach that giant man a lesson. The opponent used advanced magic to increase his body size. He believed it was impossible for anyone to survive his most powerful strike. He was an undefeated knight, proud of his strength. He would never accept losing to some kid under any circumstance. He called the protagonist an egotistical brat. That deeply annoyed him and triggered an immediate reaction. He approached, exuding an intense and intimidating demonic aura. He angrily asked who he was calling a brat. The giant knight shivered as he looked at him. He was sweating profusely and trembling before that extremely threatening presence. But the protagonist didn't want to hear any excuses now. He had been gravely insulted and wouldn't let it slide. The S-rank psychic couldn't react in time. He took the fatal blow with no chance of defending himself. It was a clean, precise slash to the neck. It was a blow meant to be direct and deadly. After striking, he spoke about watching one's tongue. As he fell, the knight heard his final words. He said that in the next life, he should talk way less. On the ground, the blonde noticed the shadow approaching. It was the body of the giant ally slowly falling toward him. It began to collapse in the direction of his comrades. His body was shrinking while falling at a very slow speed. Unfortunately, Carl didn't shrink fast enough. He was crushed by his own ally right in front of everyone. The protagonist found it ironic to see that happen so fast. He remembered how arrogant the blonde had been until then. Leaving the blonde downed, he went after the final opponent. It was the Lightning Knight, the last in line. He calmly asked for the man's name. The swordsman immediately fled using absurd and desperate speed. Of course, the cultivator wouldn't allow an easy escape. The swordsman relied on his S-rank psychic talent, but something unexpected happened as he ran frantically. He realized that no matter how fast he was, he could still be caught. He knew that fighting that man meant taking serious risks. His fear was confirmed when he saw who was nearby. He was standing toe-to-toe with the furious cultivator. He had imagined it, but seeing it confirmed his worst fears. He couldn't believe his own eyes in that final moment. The protagonist gathered a small amount of spiritual power. He grabbed the man by the collar and lifted him with ease. Even as the rival pleaded for calm, he didn't wait. He summoned a celestial lightning bolt directly onto his enemy. The lightning came down instantly with concentrated divine force. It struck the psychic dead-on with no chance to react. Even holding back, it caused nearly irreversible and severe damage. He concluded that next time he should use even less force. In Iron City, Catherine was going through a rough time. She was in her quarters thinking about her beloved. She couldn't forget his face and suffered constantly. She began to feel her body heating up more than normal. Back in the forest, Jane was in trouble. She was tied near a tree, completely vulnerable. She faced the cultivator holding some kind of receipt. He said he would release her if she signed it immediately. He demanded a large number of valuable spiritual stones from her. To convince her, the blue dragon revealed important information. Her son was still breathing and yes, he was alive. It was enough to make her sign without resistance. After that, she began crawling desperately like a worm. She wanted to get closer to her son and her fallen allies, but the protagonist neither helped nor showed her any mercy. The already complicated situation suddenly grew even worse. A demonic being appeared, sensing strong spiritual energy coming from that place. It demanded to know where the cultivator was, growing impatient. Jane had no idea what spiritual energy even meant. She told the woman to stop talking nonsense and demanded to be untied immediately, as her son was in bad shape. But the demoness only wanted to track the spiritual energy. She was analyzing the traces left by the cultivator during the recent battle. The woman warned her that he was incredibly strong and dangerous. The demon lady didn't care and said she was going to make him suffer. In that case, Jane helped by pointing out the direction he had taken. She advised her to go quickly and follow that path. After that, she threw the redhead to the ground, still tied up. The demoness turned around and seemed ready to leave. The redhead begged to at least be freed, but the demoness didn't share the same courteous intentions. When Jane saw the shadow covering everything, she was terrified. The demoness raised an enormous sphere of heavy stone. She was ready to hurl it over everyone present. She executed her plan flawlessly, with immense emotional coldness. She thought it foolish to leave survivors after winning a direct battle. She believed mercy was a sign of weakness among cultivators. Under the moonlight, the cultivator and his fox walked. They moved together through the silent forest, showing no visible concern. The protagonist carried a piece of paper worth nearly $1 million. It was a guarantee in highly valuable spirit stones. He looked at the fox and asked if she was tired. They had walked a lot, and he needed her sensory perception. They needed to find the enchanted objects of the lost ancient beasts. Even though she knew it was for financial reasons, she was moved. After opening a portal, he asked her to rest inside. The fox thought he only cared about money. But when she remembered Catherine, her thoughts started to change. She thought about what happened when they shared the same room. Realizing this, she felt embarrassed by her own intimate thoughts. To clear her mind, she decided to go for a walk alone. She opened a path through the millionaire mirror and stepped out cautiously. She wanted to breathe fresh air and calm her troubling thoughts. She was surprised by a large rock flying in her direction. She was nearly hit but dodged with feline-like reflexes. She doubted it was anyone from Iron City. When she looked up, she saw demonic servants made of stone. She could tell this encounter wouldn't be pleasant at all today. She just wanted to walk peacefully and breathe fresh air again. Now she had to quickly dodge the two petrified monsters. She used her blue phantasmal fire with magical precision. She managed to buy time, eliminating the creatures one by one. Soon she realized she was being tricked by a strange presence. She asked who was trying to play games with her now. She demanded that they show themselves already. No more games. She shivered as she felt warm breath near her neck. A voice whispered behind her with a chilling, provocative tone. The demon lady was absurdly close to the little fox. Startled, the fox dodged, trying to protect herself quickly. The demonic figure said she had only followed the spiritual energy. She claimed the fox had been emitting too much energy lately. When the demoness spoke about the cultivator, everything changed. The fox immediately understood she was talking about her master. She took on the role of a cultivator and confronted the enemy. She asked who she was and what she wanted. The demoness smiled, believing she had found her true prey. She said she was acting under orders from the supreme vengeful demon god. Her mission was to eliminate the cultivator from Ghost Valley. She revealed herself as the merciless and powerful obsidian lady. She promised to reduce the cultivator to absolutely nothing now. Bai Xing immediately realized how outmatched she was in this fight. The first attack was swift, brutal, and overwhelmingly destructive. She couldn't react and was thrown far by the force. She rolled on the ground until she slammed violently into a large rock. There she lay for a moment, amidst dust and pain. She knew she was facing something worse than anything before. The obsidian lady regretted facing such a weak opponent. She figured the fox must be drained after a long battle. She would take advantage of the weakness to exterminate her opponent with cruelty. Bai King saw that 3 attacks were about to strike. She tried to dodge and ambush the enemy with strategy, but she realized too late that she had fallen into a trap. She felt demonic energy quickly binding her body. The blow hurled her into the air, then straight to the ground. It was more cruel than all previous attacks combined. The demoness said she wouldn't allow herself to be caught off guard again. She sought revenge for the death of her beloved gargoyle steed. Above all, she served the demon god's will. She said that Cultivator was doomed to total destruction. It was a fate carved by her master's will. Before the final blow, Bai King asked for an explanation. She wanted to know who this demon god truly was. She asked if it was the same one killed by a cultivator. The obsidian lady became enraged by such a disrespectful provocation. He said he would soon rule over the 3 realms. The fox smiled and sincerely thanked him for the information revealed. She said that even though she was weak, she knew how to fight. She knew how to deal with female opponents effectively. She released her magical breath in soft shades of pink. The energy filled the area and surrounded the enemy. When the demon inhaled the breath, something changed inside her. Her eyes sparkled and her skin became warm. She had a hallucination of her master in an intimate scene. She imagined being chosen as a goddess by the demon god. She wanted to reject the gift, but he could clearly read her thoughts. He said he would fulfill the secret desire hidden deep within her. He declared that she would be his companion forever. She trembled when she felt firm hands around her waist. She heard that she couldn't disobey such a higher decree. The ceremony would be sealed with love between them. She could hardly believe it was actually happening now. Meanwhile, the fox silently watched the illusion unfold. Even injured, she noticed the vulnerability of the enchanted enemy. The obsidian lady was lost in her own desire. Bai Ting decided she had to act while she had the chance. She gathered strength and prepared for the final attack. She would take advantage of the illusion to ensure a sure victory. But the obsidian lady reacted immediately. Not only did she resist, but she counterattacked with brutal intensity. She drove her spear into the chest of the defenseless fox. Bai King couldn't understand how she had broken free. The demon herself explained that the illusion ended with pain. To do so, she had deliberately inflicted pain upon herself. She pulled out the spear and revealed the trick she had used. After the strike, Bai King fell wounded to the ground. She tried to stop the bleeding by pressing her wound with her hands. As she suffered, she heard praise for her romantic illusion. The lady said it had truly been something magnificent. However, the demon god would reign over the three realms. He would be worshipped by all, including enemies and followers. The demon gathered stones and formed a new spear. She wanted to end the fight and destroy her opponent. Bai Xing realized she might not get another chance. Even so, she didn't give up and closed her eyes. With tears streaming, she cried out for her master in desperation. She wished to be saved before the spear struck her. She screamed so loudly that the protagonist heard her. He was already nearby and arrived just before the impact. With his hands, he shattered the spear made of rocks, preventing the lady from killing his precious companion. The celestial was frozen by such overwhelming strength. She couldn't believe someone had destroyed her weapon so easily. The protagonist glanced over and scolded the fox. He said walking alone at night was dangerous. She realized her mistake, unsure how to apologize. She felt like a fool for disobeying and getting hurt. Even while crying, she asked why he hadn't come sooner. Hearing her, he said he had arrived at the right moment. Turning to the demon, he noticed something very strange about her. He asked why there was such a visible look of fear on her face. She trembled upon seeing someone who resembled the god so much. She didn't understand how someone could look so much like him. She knew that demonic lineage was rare and noble. She started to understand when she remembered how Jane had been tied up. She thought it was strange to restrain a woman in such a specific way. She asked the protagonist if he was the cultivator everyone was looking for, but he was only curious about the magic she had used. He wanted to know if it was just some magical dust. The demon laughed, saying it was far more complex. She claimed that he would deeply regret it very soon. She launched her most powerful attack with several sharp stones. She said they would pierce his body like blades. She expected to see him shredded by the devastating strike, but she was shocked to see him untouched inside a golden sphere. He was protected by a flawless magical barrier. The cultivator asked if she knew Jane Ase. He wanted to know how she was doing and seemed concerned. The demon froze, surprised by the unexpected question. She couldn't believe he actually cared about that woman. As she took too long to answer, he released a spark. The small light flew directly toward the enemy, but as it approached, it turned into a magical spear. The impact hurled the demon violently away. She landed with her legs in the air, stunned by the blow. She hit the ground and tried to comprehend such spiritual force. Even so, the protagonist insisted on asking about Jane. The demon didn't understand why he wanted information about her. She claimed she had already eliminated that enemy. Upon hearing that, he unleashed an intense murderous aura. The celestial began sweating cold, regretting the comment. She realized she had made a very serious mistake. He repeated the question to confirm the death. Only then did the demon realize the gravity of her answer. That being was so terrifying that she was paralyzed. Even standing right in front of him, she couldn't move a single muscle. She could only feel the crushing pressure from his presence. Now it made sense that he had protected that S-rank woman. She started to imagine a possible romance between the two. If that were true, the whips made a lot more sense. She would be in serious trouble if she really had killed his partner. Even so, she couldn't show that she had thought of that. It would be too shameful to admit such a thing to herself. He recovered quickly and declared his true identity without fear, saying he was a 5th-level demonic beast. He called himself the Obsidian Lady and was there to kill him, raising her hand and summoning her most powerful strike. She said she would put all her strength into that spell. The protagonist simply watched as she gathered celestial energy. He noticed in her eyes a determined homicidal intent. Soon the skies began to react to her invocation. Several meteors seemed to be drawn by her magical force. One of them glowed intensely and crashed violently from the sky. When it hit the ground, it spread fire everywhere. Even in flames, the protagonist found it simply incredible. She had truly brought down an asteroid through sheer power. He summoned his sword and asked what use it had now. The blue dragon simply opened its mouth immediately. It swallowed the entire asteroid in an instant without any difficulty. It became slightly bloated and looked at its master with curiosity. It wanted to know what he'd do with the demoness next. Then it let out some gas and returned to its normal form. The protagonist was now visibly irritated and outraged. How could a level 5 beast dare try to kill him? The demoness, trembling, knew it was the end for her. She now understood the prophecy made by the demonic priest. Even lying on the ground, she said she wouldn't speak of her master. But the protagonist surprised her once again with a magical document. He wanted to make the same deal, 1,000,000 for her freedom, but she revealed she had absolutely nothing. That was unacceptable and left the protagonist deeply disappointed, so he decided to use the Millennial Mirror to recover something. He cast the power that extracts equipment instantly. He knew he wouldn't get much, but he hated walking away with no profit. After that, the demoness lost all of her magical garments. She was left completely naked and found the situation extremely uncomfortable. She suspected he might be some kind of pervert in disguise. The protagonist replied that she was overthinking things. He said he didn't care about gender or appearance. If it was a demon, he would eliminate it just the same. He cast his ultimate attack, the Celestial Thunderbolt. He ordered it to carry out his will with total destructive precision. He turned his back and walked away without looking back. The body of the obsidian lady vanished completely in the explosion, leaving behind only her pure and glowing demonic core. It was a rare 5th level demonic beast core. He picked up the item and gave it to the hungry dragon. He said it would be his lunch for a long time. With the enemy defeated, he turned to the fallen fox. He noticed she was badly injured, lying on the ground. Seeing her condition, he gently propped her up against a tree. He wanted to keep the fox's body slightly supported for recovery. He called her by king, but she didn't respond. He began lightly tapping her face and arms. Gradually, he increased the intensity to see if she would react. Unable to take it anymore, she grabbed his arm and made a request. With a weak voice, she asked him to stop the tapping. He was pleased to see her respond. It was important because she could locate enchanted treasures with precision. He placed her on his shoulders and thought about taking her to a healer, but she said that physical treatment wasn't necessary. She said it would be enough to feed her with sufficient spiritual energy. She suggested finding a hot spring for better absorption. He found the idea strange and asked an uncomfortable question. He wanted to know if they would need to bathe together now. With no other choice, he looked for a place where that would be possible. He found a natural pool, but felt uncomfortable with the situation. He was naked, while she remained dressed, which irritated him. The fox explained that she didn't need to remove her clothes. She asked him to simply release his concentrated spiritual energy. As soon as he began, she already felt her body responding positively to the energy he emitted. His spiritual energy was strong, warm, and enveloping. She drew closer, seduced by that power. Already blushing, she could no longer resist the intense spiritual pull. As her wounds healed, she saw even more of that source, pressing her lips to his and holding his body tightly. They both plunged together into the hot spring, exchanging vital energy. Even underwater, she kept her lips locked with his the entire time. She drew every drop of energy, completely restoring herself in the process. After emerging, she looked like a goddess reborn by sacred waters. Meanwhile, he felt drained by that spiritual kiss. He thought she had gone a bit overboard with the absorption. She realized it and decided to apologize sincerely, saying it was his tempting energy's fault. Now fully recovered, she clung to his arms while they both flew through the skies atop the blue dragon. He didn't seem pleased with her constant closeness and asked if it was really necessary to stick so close. The closeness was due to her fear of heights, but soon she detected a new source of magical power. She said she had sensed an enchanted object nearby. She advised that they descend immediately to investigate the present energy. Meanwhile, below them, a young woman was running desperately through the forest. She was a golden-haired elf fleeing from pursuers. The girl was the renowned elven princess Enola. She had B-rank mental power, yet was still fleeing. Two delinquents from a local gang were trying to capture her now. Even though she was pure and innocent, they wanted to sell her illegally. They planned to trade her for a good price on the black market. Their intentions had been clear from the very beginning. Knowing their depraved intentions, she released her power in a single strike. Although beautiful, the strike was fatal, with extremely high damage. Blue butterflies appeared, ready to drain their life force. Quickly, as she noticed the butterflies surrounding them, she activated the butterfly curse. She ordered them to wither, and their youth began to vanish. She stood watching as the two of them seemed to go mad with fear. The young girl explained that she did it because they had tried to hurt her before. While she was speaking, a new woman appeared, mocking elven magic. She had reddish hair and wore tight clothing with wild stripes. It was Gina, a powerful and extremely dangerous A-rank telepath. She called the elf a little girl and said she would restrain her. The elf then summoned the blue butterflies again with her magic. She believed that the previous trick would work once more against the two. However, the opponents were on guard and warned about the repeated spell. Gina created two whirlwinds surrounding herself and her partner. That way, she could protect Mark, the other telepath of the same rank. The redhead claimed the whirlwinds were violently sharp blades. The young elf felt unlucky for having left home at all. She had been seeking help but found herself in a dangerous, inescapable battle. She soon saw her butterflies being destroyed by the enemy's tornadoes. Frightened, she didn't understand why her whirlwinds had suddenly vanished too. Everything stopped when something fell from the sky. A man and a fox woman. The fox stared at the elf with a curious expression. Meanwhile, the fox said she sensed a strong magical aura. According to her intuition, the energy was coming from the girl in front. In the blink of an eye, the protagonist was face to face with her. He directly asked where she had hidden the sought-after magical tool. She, confused, had no idea what he was talking about. Not subtle at all, he looked down her cleavage, suspecting something was hidden there. Meanwhile, Gina and Mark realized they were being ignored. Obviously, young Mark didn't appreciate the protagonist's attitude. He wanted to show that he didn't accept disrespect from anyone. Assuming a combat stance, he held a huge sword in his hands. Gina also prepared her whirlwinds to attack with full force. Both of them moved into position, ready to try to eliminate the protagonist immediately. That gesture left the cultivator extremely annoyed and impatient with them. He felt they had already been given more than enough time to act. Just a single glance from him was enough to leave them stunned in place. They realized he wasn't afraid of either of them. He approached the elf and slapped her lightly to wake her up. He did the same with the young man, deciding to properly discipline them. He wanted to make sure they never dared to cross their limits again. He thought the two were being far too rude, so he struck again. The strike was so well executed that they began spinning uncontrollably. Right after, both were slammed to the ground, completely confused. The protagonist called them meddlers and ordered them to leave immediately. From a distance, the elf princess couldn't believe what she was seeing. Those two, so strong, had been defeated with astonishing ease. The fox then warned that the interesting part was yet to come. The protagonist raised his hand and used the centurion's space. With the technique, he stripped both opponents of all their clothing. The elf looked on, worried about what might happen next. She thought that after undressing the pair, he might go further, especially after he looked directly at her blushing face. The elf princess felt she was in trouble again. That day was proving to be far too overwhelming for her little experience. Just imagining things made her face flush even more. She said it was her first time outside the elven village. Nervously, she begged him not to undress her too. The protagonist explained that he had no intention of doing that. Despite appearances, he claimed to be a man of integrity and trustworthiness. After a brief conversation, she understood that they were after a celestial tool. The fox then asked Aurora to recall anything strange. Maybe she had eaten or absorbed something without fully noticing. Aurora replied that everything she had consumed was part of elven tradition. She said that Zelfo made a baby from the magical water. She explained it prevented wrinkles and enhanced every curve. The elf women bathed in that sacred water once they reached a certain age. Upon hearing that, the protagonist didn't understand a thing, but he saw profit. He wanted to sell the miraculous water and get rich quickly from it. The elf said she had left the village in search of the spring. The source of life had been stolen by a monster. She said the creature had tentacles and attacked all the elf women. She told how, once captured, their limbs grew weak, so she left to seek help and find someone who could defeat the demons. The cultivator was moved by the story and offered immediate help. The fox knew he only wanted the precious water. He even admitted that he found the spring to be extremely valuable. After walking for a long time, they arrived at a forest of black trees. Strange birds flew overhead, and everything was covered in dense shadow. The place was dark, making both the protagonist and the fox uneasy. The princess explained that it was all part of a disguise. The elven race was exclusively female, without even men as visitors. She suggested he disguise himself to avoid confusion in the village. The cultivator thought he'd have to wear clothes like hers. He didn't like the idea, but decided to stay dressed as he was. After all, he was an official guest of Princess Aurora and trusted her. As soon as he entered, he felt a completely different and strange atmosphere. Sensing that, Aurora said they had entered elven territory. Suddenly, the view cleared, revealing a colorful and harmonious village. There were many women exactly as the princess had described earlier. It was an extraordinary sight, with a fresh climate and elegant architecture. The elves wore light clothing and were always relaxed around. Movement began among the elves the moment they saw Princess Aurora. They stood still, eyes wide, questioning who the visitors were. The princess explained that the two had recently saved her life. She said they had been brought there as reliable reinforcements. One of the elves found the visitor strange, since he had no breasts. Hearing that, the protagonist grew irritated by the unexpected comment, so he revealed without hesitation that he was actually a man. Upon hearing that, the elves blushed and became extremely curious. Soon they wanted to get closer, touch, and see what a man was like. The princess realized the mistake and knew it would cause chaos. They started running from all sides, screaming excitedly. They looked like ants chasing a rare and precious sweet. They all wanted to touch the man at once, without waiting their turn. They found him intriguing because he was so different from them. They surrounded the protagonist, not waiting their turn to get near him. The cultivator began to grow irritated with so many unwanted touches. The fox, however, found the situation extremely amusing. She said he was famous now and had to get used to it quickly. To him, it was strange, but the dragon found it wonderful. In his transformed form, the dragon remembered his glorious days of old. The elves noticed the dragon's body and were surprised. They had never seen something so long coming out of another being like that. Kindly, the dragon offered to let them ride on his back. They hesitated, unsure if they could all climb on at once. The cultivator wondered if he should calm the dragon down with a few pats. Meanwhile, a curvaceous woman overheard the talk about a man. It was Aurora's older sister, the queen of the elves. She wanted to understand why a man was in the village. She found it curious that, after 5,000 years, this rule had been broken. Never before had a man set foot in the elven realm until now. She held an S rank in telekinesis and was stunningly beautiful. When she saw him, the queen literally began to drool with excitement. She told her sister to show the village to the guest. Meanwhile, she herself would have a private conversation with the man. With everything planned, she invited the man to her chambers. The fox quickly realized the queen was very cunning. She had deliberately called the protagonist for a private conversation. Once alone with him, she tried to change the subject. She wanted to avoid talking about spring or the monster in that cave. The protagonist kept pressing to learn more about the stolen spring, but she looked at him strangely and drooled again. Inside the chamber, with doors and windows locked, they were alone. The queen said she was tired of keeping up appearances in front of the others. Now that they were alone, she wanted to talk about something else. She approached and asked if he could help her with her tension. The queen said she didn't know why, but she was interested. She asked him to come closer and listen to her pounding heart. She thought he might also be impatient for that moment, but the cultivator was only thinking about money, even in the presence of beauty. She asked why he was standing still, face turning red. She wanted to know if she was doing something wrong by getting closer. She asked if he liked to be in control, as she was willing to obey. Then she opened the top of her outfit and smiled. Upon seeing his chiseled abs, she felt she was witnessing a wonder. The more she looked, the more she wanted to touch that perfect body. Despite her persistence, he pushed her back with a hand on her shoulder. She asked if that wasn't enough or if she needed to do more. She still didn't know she had picked the entirely wrong cultivator. He wasn't moved just by a beautiful body. He slapped her, pushed her away, and complained. He said it was foolishness because he was a serious person. Then he turned around and said he was in a hurry. He was determined to leave that room immediately, but she asked once more for him to hit her. Looking back, he noticed she looked strange. The queen was ready to continue what he had refused. The protagonist found that behavior very strange and inappropriate. He thought such a request could only come from someone insane. Despite her beauty, she couldn't maintain a serene aura. She said everything was because of the spring of life. She was trapped there, dreaming of seeing the outside world. That same sad little story wouldn't move the experienced cultivator. She believed it would be enough to convince him to comply. So she asked again for him to hit her, without hesitation. He looked at her and found the whole thing increasingly strange. He said he wouldn't do that and was already leaving. Things changed when she saw something through him. She said she had a precious gem and would give it to him, but only if he did what she wanted. Speaking his language, she finally managed to spark his real interest. The cultivator's energy surged, spreading throughout the room. Outside, everyone could feel the spiritual force emanating. Meanwhile, the mischievous dragon showed off different forms with vanity. At times it appeared as a dragon, at others as a beautiful enchanted sword. It bragged, saying it was a master of tricks and transformations. It could shift into any form it had devoured before. First, it became a household ghost, a level 3 monster. Then it transformed into the powerful obsidian lady, a level 5 monster. When it became a girl, it received invitations to bathe with the elf women. The fox watched, incredulous at the boldness of that perverted sword, but her attention shifted upon sensing an intense spiritual energy. She realized it was coming directly from the elf queen's quarters. She grew concerned when she heard strange sounds from inside. They sounded like strong impacts, but not typical of a normal fight. She knew the space was too small for a real battle. If it was a strength test, the queen would be regretting it. Far from there, at the wild bandits' camp, the men returned from patrol. They told the leader about the unpleasant encounter with an elf in the forest. They were all bruised, including the 2 who had been attacked by cursed butterflies. The leader listened attentively and said he'd take some action later. He believed it was shameful to get beaten in return without any dignity. He emphasized that he wasn't just any leader, since he had a C-rank mental level. The redhead Gina complained, saying that man was utterly despicable. She told how he hit her and took her most cherished belongings, including her favorite outfit, printed with wild leopard patterns. The leader grew furious as he had never seen Gina without clothes. Now a stranger had seen what none of them ever had. The situation worsened when she said the man had entered the tribe. Ox was upset, since he had never been able to approach the elf village. He climbed down from the tree and said he'd gather men for revenge. He was going to show that no one treated his teammate that way. Meanwhile, the queen's quarters still radiated strange spiritual energy. The princess knew she had to warn someone about the immediate danger. She burst into the room and froze completely at what she saw. Her sister was in a strange position, receiving slaps from the cultivator. She had never seen anything so bizarre and turned completely red. Things got worse when she locked eyes with the serious cultivator. She quickly apologized, pulled the door shut, and fled in a panic. The queen shouted that it was a misunderstanding. She was only testing something. Outside the village, Ox and the others had reached the trees. Jaina was with him, as well as the young man who had been struck earlier. They came face to face with 3 elf women on local patrol. The elves knew it was another man, but one with no charm at all. They looked at him with disdain and said he was not welcome. That area was exclusive to elf women, and visitors were not allowed. Ox said he wouldn't leave because he wanted to see long legs. He thought the elf women were beautiful and unlike anything he knew. The redhead found his reaction strange. She expected something more violent. The captain seemed more smitten than vengeful. The other guys wore odd expressions, not seeming to want a direct confrontation. That's when someone appeared with a powerful and imposing presence. She believed those intruders should never lay hands on the local elf women. With the power of the lunar eruption, she blasted them all to the ground. She was none other than the queen of the powerful elves. She said that insignificant beings would never be allowed to step on that land. Now standing before her was only the captain of that band. He had deeply angered the queen, who treated him like an insect. She said she would let him live if he left immediately. But the man was mesmerized by the stunning beauty of the elf queen. He thought she was a diamond elf, just like in the Forbidden Book. Meanwhile, the cultivator arrived, asking Jaina about her revenge. He said the guys felt bad for giving her so few pieces of gear. Smiling, he said he'd take the rest of the redhead's equipment. Jaina explained that the man had taken her clothes. Upon hearing this, the captain became furious and decided to confront him. He charged full speed at the cultivator, looking for a direct lesson. Before he could reach him, he was kicked hard by the princess. He thought the kick was savage and was impressed by her strength. He hadn't known that elves could also reach S rank. The cultivator, intrigued, asked why she had intervened in that fight. Turning around, she said that only her crush was allowed to touch her. She explained that his wonderful power couldn't be wasted. He could only use those hands to give her gentle pats. She said that out loud, leaving everyone there speechless. The captain was upset for being ignored by her once again. The queen turned and announced who the only man she needed was. She called Zhang Tianshan and ordered the elves to take care of the others. The long-haired man promised to show his worst behavior. He ordered his subordinates to attack all the elves at once. But those elves had elite training focused on deadly combat. Jaina tried to use her tornadoes, but gained no advantage. The princess responded with her swarm of powerful blue butterflies. Meanwhile, the queen exuded a completely different kind of spiritual energy. She told the man he didn't deserve to witness her true power. She said her special day had been ruined by him. She declared that he would have to pay for such an offense against her. The man insisted, saying he deserved a chance like anyone else. But those words only fueled the queen's fury even more. She stated that only she decided who could impress her. She launched a lunar cannon in the man's direction without hesitation. He shouted that she didn't know who she was dealing with. He revealed he was the leader of the northern wild bandits. He tried to block the explosive lunar wave with his advanced telekinesis. He believed he could withstand the intense heat coming from the queen. After all, he was also S rank and would not accept rejection. The queen grew even more enraged by his forced confidence. She believed he was just faking strength to appear bold.
Our video ends here. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe to the channel. Until next time, bye bye.